You're listening to the Hella Well with Danielle show, a podcast taking women of color on a journey exploring all things wellness and travel related. We're all about showing you how to put on your oxygen mask first and creating lasting self-care habits that will free you to travel the world and live the life you truly desire, and not one you have to fake loving. I'm your host, Danielle Washington. Now let's buckle up and start this journey. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Hella Well with Danielle podcast. I am your host, Danielle Washington, and I recently was in a yoga teacher training. I've been probably talking about this a little bit on the side, but I am in the midst of, I have like literally a couple more hours left in my Kundalini yoga teacher training, and one of my teachers was talking about finding your rhythm, and he was talking about chanting all these different things, and it made me think about the rhythms we have in our own lives. And that we don't even think about, like how finding your own rhythm is truly the mastery to self. And it also is the key to you finding your own happiness. Like I talked about in last week's episode about, finding your balance in the midst of chaos. And finding balance in the midst of chaos is great. But if you don't know your own rhythm, or if you're on dancing to a rhythm that's not even working for you, it don't matter if you have balance or not, because you're going to be offbeat no matter what. And the way I like to think about it is like there's natural rhythms in absolutely everything we do. And when I think about rhythms, or kind of what rhythms are, and the way I'm talking about today, is looking at it as it's creating a collective structure or patterns that create predictable effects. So for example, my blood pressure has been stupid high. And I'm sure anyone's listening to this who's like my blood pressure checkers, I'm like, what's your blood pressure today? My blood pressure has been averaging recently like in like the 170 over 101 106 range, and I've done everything. Like for years I was able to manage my blood pressure with no medication whatsoever, just diet, because I don't have the weight to lose, thank goodness. Changed my diet, changed my way of living, and was able to manage it. But recently my blood pressure has gone stupid high. And it is creating a rhythm in my body, literally, that is having me off. And it's creating a predictable effect. If I keep my blood pressure at these higher levels, the predictable effect is that I'm going to have a stroke. I mean, we're knocked on some wood. There's all these different medical things that can happen. And so for me, I was like, okay, I don't really like this rhythm my blood pressure's at. So I need to do something to change the rhythm, shift the rhythm in my blood system so I can live a happier, healthier life and live hella well. And so I decided to take medication, which I don't really like taking medication, but right now I don't have it in me to figure out natural ways to do it right now. And I'm able to recognize, okay, as I was talking about last week, and if you didn't listen to last week's episode, I highly recommend going back. But last week I was talking about the fact that I'm over capacity. I see it, I recognize it. And it's interesting because I think this is one of the first times in my life I've been able to actually verbalize that I'm over capacity versus like, I got this, I'm stressed, whatever, but I got this. No, I haven't had it for a while. But on top of that, knowing that I was over capacity, knowing that I had all these extra additional stressors, and I don't have the extra time or luxury to be finding some natural ways to deal with my blood pressure, I was like, okay, until I'm able to do this, I'm going to find a rhythm that works for me to get this other rhythm down. And so that's what I've been doing. But if you think about it, we all have rhythms. There's all these natural rhythms. We have a rhythm of our menstrual cycles. If you are identifying as a woman, and, if you look at your menstrual cycles, I have a mentor, her name is Kate Northorpe. I was probably botched people's last names so many times. But she is the founder of Origin, which is amazing. She has this great planner and this philosophy of creating your productivity around your menstrual cycle. And I think it works. I don't think it works. Let me phrase that. I know that it works. I know some people who have done it and it has worked for them. If you look at your cycles and different phases of your cycle, your menstrual cycle, you have different forms of energy. And it's a great thing to look at that most of us don't even pay attention. Like, oh yeah, right before my cycle comes, I'm, probably a little bit, maybe I'm more creative, or I have more energy, or right after it happens, or during it, I feel really down, or I feel really lethargic. So we have these cycles in our lives, but we also have daily cycles, rhythms that we beat to. We have monthly rhythms that we beat to. We have seasonal rhythms that we beat to. We even have the moons. We have the new moon, the full moon, and there's all these different things. Even looking at astrologically, we all have these rhythms in our lives that we don't pay attention to. And a rhythm could be as simple as like you're flowing your rhythm when, when you have that surge of energy, that surge of creativity, and you're like, I'm good, everything's great, like I'm doing my thing, you're on beat, you're like, I got this. I'm like flowing, like things come at me. Nope, not today, not today. But then you have those moments where, oh man, I'm stressed out, I'm burnt out. Everything I'm doing doesn't seem like it's going my way. I'm trying and it still doesn't seem to happen. You're just in a slump and a low. That's also part of a rhythm. And then also part of a rhythm that we don't think about is that need or that moment of rest and recharge. And, life rhythms is the underlining pattern to how we operate. And when you become aware of your life rhythms, you can make choices, like real life choices and decisions that affect how you operate so that they are in alignment with your authentic self. And so you can be in tune. But most of us are out here walking out of tune. And I blame, and I'm going to sit here and blame, I blame social media. Social media, and especially in the wellness industry, we are taught that there's all these rhythms we need to, abide to. Like you need to abide to this rhythm and, do yoga this way. You need to abide this rhythm and you need to eat this way. You need to go on a plant-based diet and you need to exercise this many times. You need to journal every day. No, just like wellness, your rhythm is like your own. It's custom to you. But we're taught and trained to follow these other rhythms and ways of life that aren't in alignment with our highest self. And then we wonder why I don't feel good. Like I was following this perfect example. I was following this guy, great person. I know people who've used the stuff and is amazing. And he talks about all these detoxes. And I really like what he's talking about. I agree with what he's talking about. But when I try to do the detox, my body said, sis, maybe it ain't the right time, but all I know is this ain't for you. This ain't for you. And had I followed the other rhythm of someone else and followed the rhythm of me seeing other people use these things and it worked for them, I would have stayed on a off path, off beat for my life. And so being able to recognize and becoming aware of your life rhythms is a game changer. And we also have these life cycles that I don't think we even pay attention to. Like, so in, Kundalini yoga or just yoga in general, like they talk about different life cycles that we go through. So there's the cycle of consciousness, which happens every 7 years. And it kind of, I think either the 7 years or 11 years ties into numerology. So there's something about this, but that the cycle of consciousness happens every 7 years. So 7, 14, 21, 28. Think about those times, like going from 14, you're in high school, going to 21, you're grown. I'm doing my thing. 28, you think you got your thing, but it's like around the time where like, I'm almost 30, things are changing, and I'm shifting out of my 20s, which is a whole other ball game. And then in that time frame, in that cycle, you're thinking about, how do I understand things? Like, what are my priorities? And then another life cycle is the cycle of intelligence, which happens every 11 years. And it's like, how is intelligence affecting your actions? And then you think about it. So 11, 22, 33, 44. I can tell you from my experience, I've definitely seen how that shows up. Like in that 11-year cycle, I've had major shifts in my life, but it also found myself like there were periods in my life where I was working harder to get to something and shifting how I was moving things. And I was getting the knowledge that kind of gave me a boost to the next level. And life isn't this one path. Like I really feel like life goes in these cycles and circles, and it's a spiral circle up to the alignment until we're we're not here anymore. But if we don't pay attention to these cycles, and these are key cycles, if you just literally map out like what year every 7 years, and like what was going on in your life, and look to see what the patterns and the rhythms were. Look every 11 years to see what kind of patterns and rhythms were happening in terms of how your intelligence. And the other one is the life cycle, the cycle of your life energy, which happens every 18 years. And this is when you review the physical health and your vitality. So think about it. You're, 18, 30, 36, 54, 70 something. You're going through major changes in your life. I look at, from 18 to 36, yeah, my body was like, we could do everything we used to do. 18, I'm dropping it like it's hot. 36, I'm dropping it like it's hot. 54, I'm not sure we're going to be able to drop it like it's hot. But hey, that's the rhythm I'm going to be in at that time frame. And like in this last part of it, like the cycle of life energy, or just in any of these cycles, we experience new challenges, we master new skills, we adapt, and we ride these waves of internal cycles for our development. And again, these are the daily cycles we have in our lives. These are the monthly cycles we have, and these the yearly, or in these cases, they go through a certain amount of years. Perfect example of another cycle that most of us don't think about, or a rhythm that we don't think about, is how do you show up every day? Do you have a routine? Your morning or evening routine is a rhythm. Like the way I start my day affects, it is the way I start my day with collective patterns, whether it's every day before I even get out of bed, let's pause, before I even get out of bed, before I open my eyes, I think of things of gratitude. I am grateful for the sun that may be up. I'm grateful for the breath that I am experiencing, and I give moments of gratitude. Then I do certain stretches, and then I start doing stretch pose in my bed, which I will definitely put this in the chat, which helps me, and I do some breath of fire, and it helps me get my body moving, get my body going. My next pattern is I go to the bathroom, because that's what I do. Or actually, that's not true. The next thing I start doing is I start making up my bed. And this is new. This is a new rhythm that I've added, that I've noticed when I make up my bed. Again, a collective structure or patterns, I have a predictable effect. When I make up my bed, I notice I feel good at night. When I come to my bed, I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm at a hotel. Someone's come up here and made a bed. And it's not me remembering like, oh yeah, you made up this bed. But I never understood why people would make up a bed. I'm like, why make up your bed if you're going to come back later on tonight and mess it up? But when I created a pattern of making up my bed, it made me feel differently, and it started creating a predictable effect that has changed how I operate in life. And it gives me a different infusion, and it helps me. And I do a bunch of other things in the morning, but I also do a bunch of things in the evening. Like I stop watching TV by 10 o'clock, and I'm offline 100% by 11 o'clock. And that's my thing. It's like, that's when I noticed when I started doing that, I'm not up at all hours watching TV and then having crazy dreams about some crazy TV show I was watching, or feeling more restless because I'm reading what happened, in the news or other different things. I'm able to shut off my body and my mind and to release stuff from the day. And I noticed when I created this rhythm for myself, it created a predictable effect that I really liked. And it gave me an energy field that works for me. And so like when we find ways that work for us, girl, keep that, because we have such a tendency to follow the trends and then again, wonder why we're off. And another perfect example of kind of this thing is like, you look at a cycle of, because they go into shifts. Your cycles the rhythms aren't going to be, I don't know. I don't think life rhythms are a lifetime. Like, I don't think you're going to have one rhythm for your entire life. I can't think of one rhythm that I have that's for my entire life. Well, maybe like showering. Okay. Maybe showering and basic things like that, eating, whatever. But like, okay, think about it. My 20s. 20s is a perfect like life range, and I feel like it was a rhythm. My 20s was a rhythm, my 30s was a rhythm, and now I'm in my 40s and it's a new rhythm. In my 20s, I'm a new adult. I'm doing things. I got my own first, well, I didn't have my first apartment in my 20s. Well, no, I moved to college in my 20s, and so, or I was in college, and I did get my first apartment in my 20s, because that's true. I lived in DC and I had my own apartment. So I had my first apartment. I had to learn how much it costs to get laundry, like laundry detergent. I don't know why it's so expensive, but that's something I learned. So I learned, about being a new adult, voting, first job, going to college, moving out of the state, and all these different things in my 20s. And it leveled me up for my 30s. And in my 30s, I started off with the end of in my 20s was me moving to, where did I move? Oh, I moved to Italy. Was me moving to Italy. Was the end of my 20s, and then moving into my 30s, where my mind was blown and I was adapting to a new way of life. And in my 30s, I utilized that training from living in Italy to the different things I was doing, to the job that had me traveling the world, to shifting into my 40s where I'm not the same person. And they're just different rhythms that I've learned. What I've also learned is that not all rhythms are conscious. Some rhythms are really not conscious at all. So for example, a conscious rhythm that we have. I talked about the fact that a conscious rhythm I have is that I brush my teeth every day. The conscious rhythm is that I make up my bed, of my morning routine, my evening routine. A conscious rhythm that I have until it doesn't exist anymore is my menstrual cycle. That is consistently happens every month. And it's like clockwork, or it used to be like clockwork, but it's on a clock-ish, and it's a rhythm that my body, and when I get, again, think about it. Then it goes to your unconscious cycles, the rhythms that we have. So one of my unconscious cycles, my menstrual cycle used to be a conscious cycle. Now it's kind of not so conscious because it's changed. It used to be every X amount of days, it was coming like clockwork. I could get an app and the app would tell me what's happening. Now the app's like, we're not really sure. We think in the next 2 weeks, your cycle is going to come. And that's just because I guess I'm getting closer to menopause. I don't want to, recognize it, but that's going to be another rhythm that I'm going to have to rock with and ride that wave and learn how to flow with it. And then, other cycles that we aren't so conscious of, talking about the life cycles. If you've never heard about the different life cycles, you may not have even paid attention that you're going through these certain patterns in your life. You're going through certain astrological rhythms in your life that you're like, oh, I don't know why this is happening to me. But yeah, because every time, Venus hits your whatever, you're going to feel this, or you go through different things. We have all these patterns in our life and ways that we naturally function that we're not even entirely clear about. And even some of these rhythms we have could be ancestral trauma that we're not even, again, paying attention to because we're not aware of these things. So how do you figure out and know your rhythm? Like, how do you go with well, what do I do? Like, okay, I know I probably have these things, but I'm not really sure what is my rhythm. I know when I'm flowing. I know when I'm not flowing, but I'm not paying attention. And that's the first step to knowing your rhythm is being aware. Being aware of how are things showing up physically and emotionally in your life. Sure, we can know when we have that natural ease and flow, but are you paying attention to it? Are you paying attention to it when you're working so hard and you're not sure why things aren't working out? So the first part of this is being aware and listening to your body, listening for the signs that's saying, something's not right, or something is good. Do more of this. It's listening to that inner voice and also monitoring your thoughts. Our thoughts are so freaking powerful, and we forget how powerful they are when we are able to identify the limiting thoughts and beliefs that we have that tie in to unconscious patterns and rhythms that we are living. That is a game changer. And so awareness is the first step. The second step is investigating. Ask yourself some questions. Just kind of literally sit down with yourself, meditate on it, write it down in journal, or just kind of always have in the back of your head when you feel like you're maybe stuck or feeling a certain type of way or feeling really good, ask yourself, what does it feel like when I'm flowing and I'm riding that wave of the rhythm of my life? What does it feel like when I'm stuck energetically? How do I feel it energetically? And how do I feel it physically? What are signs of when your rhythm's shifting? Can you tell when your rhythms are shifting? And if so, write those things down. Like any of these things, like when you're able to see like, okay, this is what I feel like when I'm flowing. This is what I feel like. These are things that show up in my life when things aren't in alignment and they're not flowing and I'm on an offbeat and I'm not following my rhythm. These are signs when, I can tell when I'm doing really good and it's about time that a new rhythm in my life is about to shift. What are activities that you engage in that will assist you in your flow? Like, how can you accept and honor the rhythm that you're currently in? And I say this because sometimes we don't even accept and honor some of these rhythms we're in. And even on a bigger point, which I didn't mention, was one of the hugest unconscious rhythms that we live in is survival mode. Oh, it is what it is. And that's one of those rhythms that we think that we're just forced to live this. Like, this is just the way life is. This is my destiny. I have to live in this rhythm. It's all a choice. Survival mode is one of the worst rhythms. And most of us don't even recognize that we're dancing to this beat that don't even feel right. We know it don't feel right, but we're just like, but what am I supposed to do? I don't know how to change it. This is the way life is. It's the way it was for my mama. It's the way it was for my mama's mama. I don't know how to change this. But the reality is we all have a choice. We all have a choice of how we show up. And that's why it's important to be aware of your thoughts, to listen to your body, listen to the inner voice inside of you, to ask those questions and ask yourself, how am I living? How can I accept where I am, or how can I honor the rhythm that I'm in, especially if it's something where it's not where you want to be, but okay, this is where I am. How can I shift this, or how can I honor where I am in a way that is in alignment with my highest self? And then at that point, it's all about owning your rhythm. Own that this is how I dance. You may dance another way, but this is how I dance. The reality is we all have our own unique tune that we're dancing to. We all have our own rhythm that is for us. There is rhythms that are specifically for Danielle Washington. And it ain't for y'all. It ain't for anyone else. And I'm okay with that. And being able to embrace my own journey and dance to my own beat has shifted how I showed up. So like for me, I know when I do yoga in the morning, and more importantly, when I meditate in the morning, I show up differently. When I do meditation or yoga in the morning, I'm able to utilize that energy that I get from that and that joy and that vibration that puts me at a higher level. And it helps me ride out the rest of the day. So when I do those things and I have that predictable pattern and rhythm that creates a predictable effect, I'm able to get through crap that goes through the day that I'm like, when I don't do meditation and yoga in the morning, things that would annoy me usually do annoy me. And it shows up in a way where I react. But when I do yoga and meditation in the morning, I don't react as much. I'm like, that's funny. That's interesting. You would think that way. Oh, you're acting a fool today. Good for you. I'm going to continue on my good vibe moment. And I show up differently with it. But I also own the journey that I am and know that my rhythm, the rhythm that works for Danielle Washington, is the one I need to dance to. And that not all rhythms are identical. Again, what works for me may not work for you. What works for someone who is a mother may not work for someone single. What works for someone who is a Black woman living in Idaho may not work the same as a Black woman living in Atlanta. Finding your own rhythm and knowing that just because you might be the same race, gender, or live in the same location, be the same age, your rhythms may not be the same because your life experiences are not the same and your authentic purpose and self are not the same. So of course, we're not going to have identical rhythms. We may have similar rhythms to people that we vibe with, but they're never going to be identical. They're never going to be identical. So honor your uniqueness. Go against social norms. Bump what you saw on Instagram. Bump what I'm saying. Do what you want to do. Find what works for you. And that's what I'm telling you. I'm not saying do it my way. And I really do try not to say do things my way because I know I'm the expert. I have this training. Nah. Figure out what works for you and do that, boo. Tune into yourself. Tuning into yourself is one of the best ways you can live to your highest potential. One of the worst ways to do it is follow what everyone else is doing and not live on rhythm and be offbeat. Ain't nothing worse than an offbeat person. And you can see people who aren't living to the rhythm. They're trying to be like everyone else and wonder why it's not working out because they're not following and honoring unapologetically and owning their rhythm. They're the ones who are out here comparing themselves to other people. And if that's you, keep it real and know that it's a sign of you not dancing to your own beat. You being offbeat in your life and not being able to master yourself and to master your happiness because you're over here comparing and dancing to other people's rhythm. And you're wondering like, this don't feel right. It just don't feel right. But another point that I want to bring up, because I think is just as important as being aware, as investigating and asking yourself questions, but also owning, your own rhythm, is also honoring your needs. It's hard when you don't allow yourself the rest. You don't eat properly for your body and your mind at the time and your circumstances. When you don't have the right movements or the community that allows for you to be and allows the doors to clarity to be open. So when you don't take care of yourself and you kind of just are doing whatever, again, in survival mode, it is what it is, and I'm not taking care of myself and I'm on this other pattern, it's really hard to be able to even get to the awareness, to investigate the questions, and to even be able to own it because you're not giving yourself the space for the clarity. So I think that's really important to add in that you also need that space for clarity. But more importantly, or one of the last thought processes, make it work for you. Make your rhythm work for you. And that's how it becomes self-mastery. It's maximizing that knowledge of, okay, when I have these certain rhythms, I do these certain things, and I get these predictable effects. So, okay, if I follow my menstrual cycle and how it ties into my productivity, I can use it and know, okay, and this time, like in this time of my menstrual cycle, this is when I'm going to be doing all my writing. This is when I'm going to be doing all my public speaking. This is when I'm going to rest. And when you're able to maximize the knowledge of your rhythms, it changes things. When you're able, and also practice. I talked again about my meditation practice. When I meditate, I know every day it adds further and further. It adds onto that collective rhythm. Think about it. Let me backtrack a little bit further. Think about it. Or I don't know if you ever heard someone chanting or heard a lot of people singing. Going to church, you see one person singing, it sounds really good. But when the whole church is singing or the whole choir is singing, there's something powerful about that vibration. That's the same thing with your own rhythm. When you practice it more and more and more, practice, you're building up that collective energy and good vibes and that frequency to ride on a higher vibe. And that's what yoga does for me every day. That's what the meditation does for me every day. It helps me to hold that energy and maintain that rhythm and that wave much longer. And when you own your rhythm and you make it work for you, you're able to make better decisions. Your energy is just higher. And when your energy is higher and you're vibing higher, you attract more people who are vibing higher, which again goes back into bettering your life, bringing more joy and happiness in your life, more self-mastery in your life. The reality of it all is, I don't know, create your rhythm. Create a rhythm, find a wavelength that works for you. And do you, boo? Do you over and over and over until the little voice inside says, it's time for that rhythm to shift. And that's the pattern. That's the rhythm. Find your rhythm, stop copying other people, own it, honor your needs, and make it work for you. And that's what I got for you. Make sure that you also are checking out and our YouTube page, my YouTube page, but also making sure that you are following us on social media, because what I talk about here, I also talk about a lot of different other things on Instagram. I'm more heavily on Instagram, but I just want you to find your way. I don't have all the answers. I'm on this journey just like you, finding my rhythm and dancing to it. I hope you find your beat. I'll talk to y'all later. Ciao. Thanks for joining us this week on the Hello Well with Danielle show. Make sure to visit our website, hellowellwithdanielle.com, where you can subscribe to our show on iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music and never miss an episode. Also, you can follow us on social media at Hello Well with Danielle on Facebook and Instagram, and Hello Well Danny on Twitter. And if you like hella love the show and got some good nuggets out of it, know that I'm not too proud to ask for you to please leave a rating or review on iTunes so that we can continue to expand our reach and help other women of color. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I hope to see you next week. Ciao.